Bulvinaka and welcome to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and with us on today's episode of the program, we have representing the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, one of their acting principal research officers, Mrs. Amelia Nairomba. She'll be with us in studio today to talk to us about the National Women's Expo 2017 and the plans that the ministry has for the expo. Of course, Bulvinaka and welcome Mrs. Nairomba, and thank you very much for taking the time out to be with us here on Gold FM.
Bulvinaka, Dion. Once again, I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, on behalf of the ministry, whilst you're giving us this opportunity to raise awareness on the upcoming National Women's Expo, which will be held in June this year. So otherwise, we would like to thank you as well that this is a platform as well to raise awareness on what we have in plan for this year's expo. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Nairomba. First up, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and the role that you play at the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation?
Thank you, Dion. I'm originally from Bua, and I've been working for the ministry for quite a while. And actually, the role of the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation is to provide policy advice to government in relation to issues on the disadvantaged, which includes the women, children, disabilities, senior citizens, and the public at large. So that is basically the function of the ministry. And also we provide empowerment programs in relation to the issues which relates to our target groups, and also the overarching is alleviation of poverty in Fiji.
I see. And yes, your job description, acting principal research officer. That's a very interesting title. What exactly do you do on a day-to-day basis, Mrs. Nairomba?
Thank you. It's actually providing, doing research actually on the issues of women. Actually, we get to collate data and information in relation to sex disaggregated data in Fiji, and which address the issues of women in agriculture, women in fisheries, women in forestry, or women in economic, or engaged in women in business. So these are some of the areas which we work in the research unit in the ministry, which we get to collate and provide policy advice to the executives on how best we can improve our services or the programs, which you could see whether it's, are we targeting on the right area, or in what particular division which we see that there's an increase of violence. So these are specific areas that we work in the department in relation to research. And also linked to that is my role here as well. This is the purpose of why I'm here as well, is the coordination and the implementation of the National Women's Expo, which we are staging in June.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Nairomba. Of course, with us in studio today on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation to tell us more about the National Women's Expo 2017. She is the Acting Principal Research Officer, Mrs. Amelia Nairomba. Now, Mrs. Nairomba, moving on with our questions, the 2017 National Women's Expo is coming up in June, like you said, and women from all around the country will be congregating to discuss and share ideas, as well as promote and inspire other women to be more financially aware and motivated. Now, when exactly is the National Women's Expo scheduled to begin? Where is it going to be held? And basically, what's the aim or what's the theme of this year's National Women's Expo?
Thank you. Thank you, Dion. Okay, first of all, the date for our National Women's Expo is on the 14th to the 16th of June 2017, and it's happening at the Vodafone Arena in Suva. And this year we'll be staging a total of 500 women artisans throughout.
That's quite a number, Mrs. Nairomba.
Yes, it is. And it's from the 4 divisions. And the main theme this year is be empowered, be the change. So basically what we're actually doing in terms of staging this platform is actually recognizing and promoting rural women's talents, and also providing them the services during this 3 days event, which you will see that, as you might know, that we actually focus on rural women who are actually out there in the villages, out in the islands, in the communities, who we've worked very closely with the Fiji Arts Council in terms of identifying our rural women throughout the 4 divisions. So you might be aware that we did a few provincial craft shows throughout the divisions from last year and ending this year, in identifying women's products that are of standard, specifically on the quality, and also having to see that these are marketable products that not only we're looking domestically, but also looking beyond our borders, which is more regional and international as well. So that is what we're really working on in terms of, we've been working very closely with the Fiji Arts Council for the past 2 years, specifically for them to assess and identify with us the specific women. And also one of the things that we have encouraged this year is that we've gone to provincial craft shows because of we've identified and we value some of the products and some of the artifacts which are well known with our traditional values, which we would like to encourage and strengthen. And in a way, how would we be able to market them as well? So that is why the ministry is very grateful and would like to acknowledge the assistance of Ministry of Industry and Trade through the Fiji Arts Council, which we're working very closely, and which the main goal as well, is the having these rural women licensed with the Fijian made emblem.
So these rural women, of course, once the ministry and the Fiji Arts Council works together with those women, they get those Fijian made stickers that they can put on their products.
Yes, once they've been identified, and they'll be assessed as well on like I've said, on the main criteria is the product and the quality of the products. Most of the women, I know they might be listening this morning, which we have, they have been identified. So maybe from 25 women that have been identified from the province of Ra, maybe a handful of 13 have been identified to be licensed, new license holders for this year. So based on the quality, that's why I really emphasize on the issue of the standard of the products, which is of quality, and that is why I'll be reiterating this. This is why we're working very closely with Fiji Arts Council and also Ministry of Health and Medical Services in terms of assessing the food products, the preserved foods especially, in ensuring that they meet the quality of, not only we're looking within our borders, but beyond our borders as well.
I see. Thank you for that, Mrs. Nairomba. Of course, with us today in studio on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, their acting principal research officer, Mrs. Amalia Nairomba, and she's in studio with us to tell us more about the National Expo, Women's Expo 2017. Stay with us. We'll have more after the break. Bulavinaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and on today's episode of Speak Your Mind, we'll be talking about the National Women's Expo 2017. And with us in studio to tell us more about the National Women's Expo is Mrs. Amalia Nairomba. She is from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, and she is the acting principal research officer. Once again, Mrs. Nairomba, thank you very much for being with us here today on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. And moving back into the questions, why did the ministry decide to have an event like the National Women's Expo? Can you give us just a little insight into how the National Women's Expo came about?
Thank you, Dion. Okay, I'll take us back to 2013, which was when this was first mooted, and we had wanted to have a collective, because there are few international days which the ministry gets to celebrate during the year, which is one International Women's Day. We have the Rural Women's Day, and then we have the other program is focusing on the elimination of violence against women, which is on the 16 days of activism against violence against women. So this was which had been moved by our former ministers in terms of having to provide a platform and staging it in collectively in and also commemorating these days. This would be a way that be able to provide a platform and to showcase the talents of our rural women out there. And also at the same time, while celebrating those events, they come in with themes and which will link to information which our rural women need to access. So that has been the drive since then, and that was when we had first was given the opportunity to stage it again nationally here at the Vodafone Arena in 2014, and also in 2015, and now we're going to the third National Women's Expo. And basically, it's actually the main gist of why we really want to progress this program is focusing on the economic empowerment of our rural women, and also seeing that we have various international commitments, looking at the sustainable development goals in terms of ensuring that services are provided, and it's also women have the right, especially rural women, having the right to access such services, and also recognizing the contribution to the community, and also recognizing, promoting their talents, and which is why we had staged this platform for the past 3 years now, and we've seen a lot of improvement in terms of what they come to present during the National Women's Expo is the products, and gone are the days that we've always provide shows and just to come and just showcase what they have, but it's actually providing them in sense in terms of also access to other services, which we're getting women from the maritime areas, we're getting women from the highlands and also from coastal areas to be able to not only come and stage or utilize this platform, but also having to access the services, which I believe which is a right to everybody to access services for their betterment and for sustainable development in their various communities. Thank you.
I see. So basically, the National Women's Expo offers women, especially women from our rural areas, the chance to come on down and gather new ideas. Basically, facilitate making a better product, and of course being aware of all the things that are available to them in terms of services from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. A very great initiative, I must say. And Mrs. Nairomba, tell us what's on offer at this year's National Women's Expo, very generally.
Thank you. As you all aware, that we'll be having a 3 days event, and maybe just in a nutshell, there'll be build-up programs that'll be happening in build-up to the National Women's Expo, meaning that the ministry is working very closely with other agencies in government, and also with non-government organizations, development partners in providing some capacity building trainings in build-up to the National Women's Expo, and also to the participants who are also coming during the 3 days. So we're grateful that we have able to identify some of the needs also from the women in terms of basic business training, and also we've engaged few of our commercial banks in terms of providing financial literacy training. So there'll be capacity parallel events happening whilst the general public is there to tour or come and buy the products. As well, there'll be information sharing also in-house, meaning at in the main stage at the Vodafone Arena, and also side events that'll be happening as well. And for this year as well, we're looking at also in terms of one of the things that we're seeing that we'll be able to gauge in other services providers, the elections office, the FERCA will be coming in as well.
So all these other organizations and service providers will be there as well.
Exactly, because I know most of these women might have damaged their cards, or maybe some of the things that have been damaged during TC Winston. So that is the reason why we would like to rope in various service providers, which we know that which they hardly. I'm focusing also on the rural women from maritime areas who don't have this access.
So this will give a chance,
yeah?
because of all these various organizations and
Mm.
service providers, they'll be there at the expo. This will give a chance for those women from the rural areas. Basically, it's sort of like a one-stop shop for them as far as
Exactly.
services are
That's
provided.
right. And
I see.
also, yeah, so, and also part of the 3 days program is also, we'll be showcasing some of the designs, and it's on day 2 as the Rural Women Fashion Show. So that'll be happening in day 2, and we'll be actually displaying, the rural women will be actually displaying the designs of textiles in terms of clothing. And so I believe they're all looking forward to that. And also we'll be inviting certain corporate bodies to be able to see how best we can link these rural women designers and rural women artisans in terms of not only having to stage them, providing them the platform, but more so connecting them to markets, which they could see sustainable development for them as well.
I see. Thank you for that, Mrs. Nairomba. Of course, with us in studio today on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. She's here to talk about the National Women's Expo 2017. Her name, Mrs. Amalia Nairomba, and she is the Acting Principal Research Officer for the Ministry. We'll have more in our next segment, and also in our next segment, we'll have another representative of the Fiji Arts Council joining us on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. Stay with us. I'm Dion Davu. We'll have more after the break. Bulvinaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and with us in studio today, talking about the National Women's Expo 2017 from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Mrs. Amalia Nairomba. She is the Acting Principal Research Officer, and also joining us from the Fiji Arts Council, Mr. Laive Koso. To the two of you, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us here today, and especially to you, Mr. Vekoso. Thank you for joining us in this third segment. Now, very quickly, can you simply just tell us about the Fiji Arts Council's role at the National Women's Expo 2017?
Thank you, Dion. The Fiji Arts Council's role is to basically assess all the craft and the arts from the women of the rural areas that has previously been mentioned in all the exhibitions that has been staged in the previous months. And so we go out and we just assess and make sure that they meet all the criteria as far as the neatness of their work, and also and recommending them further to Ministry of Industry and Trade to be able to qualify for the Fiji crafted, Fiji made product standard.
Now you talk about the Fijian made product standard. That's, of course, they receive a sticker if they qualify for that.
Yes, they receive a license, and also they receive the stickers to go with that.
So once they do receive that license and that sticker, basically any product that they make after that is Fijian made and it's off a standard.
Basically the one that we've assessed. Not everything that they do, but that doesn't limit them from applying for all those. And so whatever that we've assessed, all the products that we've assessed to the pertaining artist, that is the one that we would recommend further if they meet all the criteria that is recommended under the Fiji Arts Council.
I see. Very interesting, Mr. Vekoso. And yes, for our listeners and for our viewers at home, especially our women in the rural areas, what are some of the criteria that they need to meet if they're interested in perhaps participating next year?
I guess the idea is probably just taking women to the market, and so you look at how the product is presented, how it's being created, that it's neat and it's something that it's catchy to the eye, and so the way if they're sewing a tablecloth, maybe we would look at the way the corners are met, the neatness of the presentation, or the way they make it. And if they meet all the criteria, then we would recommend them further.
So, of course, criteria would include being very neat, and of course, creativity does come into play.
Yes.
And
it
what
is.
about the actual products themselves? Does the Fiji Arts, is there a limit? Basically, maybe like as you gave as an example, is it just clothing and articles of articles of houseware, basically, or does it encompass pretty much anything that you can think of?
It is quite a wide variety of things that they can do. Anything that they can create in their own imagination, or indigenous arts, anything of any genre. It has it's pretty much
Now,
available for
earlier
everybody.
in our previous segment, Ms. Naromba had made mention that they're also encouraging the indigenous arts as well, especially those products which feature indigenous artwork. How does the Fiji Arts Council actually help facilitate, help these people, like say, do you encourage rather the individuals to make more of these indigenous-based artworks and handicrafts?
We do. For indigenous, there's quite a fine line, because they have certain provinces that I guess that are the owners of the intellectual property of
I see.
that product. And so, for example, those that do carving could be from the special region in Laos, and so that they will we won't be able to certify anyone that's not from that region.
I see.
And so, because the Fiji Arts Council role is to be able to safeguard and also to promote the indigenous arts of the different provinces. And so our first responsibility is to those, like for example, those that weave the Ndaku fans. We will only be able to authenticate or certify the women of Ndaku. And unfortunately, the women of the other provinces would not be able to be certified in that aspect.
And of course, this is to safeguard the cultural heritage from each of the various provinces around Fiji, so no one sort of like copies
That
another
is correct.
person's work. I see it. So it's all about keeping things original. And yes, you talked about going back to the Fijian made sticker, because I reckon a lot of people, especially the ladies locked in right now, would be very interested when they're developing, or rather they're designing the handicrafts. They've just got to make sure quality, take their time, do it properly, do it nice. It's not just I'm doing this just for the sake of the program and I'm going to take my stuff there and make some money. This is actually what the ministry, along with the FAC, is trying to encourage, is the product itself, the standard of the product, if I'm not correct, yes?
That is correct, Dion. It'd be like buying plates from, I guess, one of the big stores in town. If you, mothers have they have natural lenses for this. And so if they go to buy a plate, they will tilt it upside down and, check there's no dent, there's no cracks, there's no, and that's why women take so long shopping, because they look at all the finer details that we just kind of have a tendency to overlook. And so if it meets the lenses, I guess that they're ready to go.
I see. Thank you for that, Mr. Vekoso. And can you just give us a little insight into the sort of handicrafts and things available at this year's? Of course, no doubt you've seen some very wonderful pieces.
Amazingly, I've been invited to a few of the exhibitions that's been staged at the different divisions, and I must say it's going to be an exciting event. And those of you that are looking for in preparations for gifts and weddings and other household, I guess just a place to go and buy traditional things, this would be the time. And also to our wholesaler dealers and even our retailers, if they are looking, this will be the place, because these are the women that has been selected from all the regions, the four regions that they've been the best. And so, and it just gets better and better every year. And if you need things that are locally made to be displayed in your retail shops, this would be a grand time to go and probably engage with these artists.
Now, you talk about the artwork being from all the different provinces, the four regions of Fiji. Now, while I was carrying out my research for this episode, I found out that it's 25 women from each province. Is that correct?
Maybe just to enlighten you on that. From the 500 women that we're hosting, there'll be 100 women from the Eastern Division and 150 women from the Central. and 150 women also from the Western Division and 100 from the Northern Division. So we've spread out the identification of these women from the provinces which they represent. So that is basically the composition of the allocation of women from the respective 4 divisions.
Of course, and the Fiji Arts Council works with the ministry, goes to all the different craft shows that they have, the provincial craft shows that they have around the country, of course, judging the various products and handicrafts available. And one more time, Mr. Veikoso, what would you encourage our rural women when sort of pursuing this endeavor into trying to make the handicrafts for sale?
Well, I think I would like to just say the sky is the limit. We've seen women that have just entered once and have excelled really amazingly through the market, and so you never know what could come out with the things that they have created. And I'm always grateful to the women of Fiji, of the perseverance and the dedication to what they do, and I'd like to encourage all women. And if they're not selected this year, there's always a next year, and we're grateful for the government for continuously putting out a platform where our women can excel.
Thank you for that, Mr. Veikoso. And yes, back to you, Mrs. Nairamba. Who, apart from the Fiji Arts Council, what other stakeholders are involved in this year's National Women's Expo?
Thank you, Dion. We have quite a number of agencies which we've actually established, as well as our national committee, which they're from the government agencies, also NGOs, microfinance institutions, and commercial banks, corporate bodies, who works within the ambits of economic empowerment for rural women. So you might have a fair idea in terms of Ministry of Industry and Trade. We have also the Ministry of Itoki Affairs, that's from government, and also we have commercial banks. We have a representative from there, and the Reserve Bank of Fiji, and also our microfinance institutions like SPBD, NextMed, we're working very closely, and including Fiji Arts Council. So it's quite a vast scope of our stakeholders, and like I've mentioned, that we're not only focusing on the economic empowerment from provisions of the services from the various stakeholders, but also looking at the providing them the services which is not accessible for them whilst they're out in the rural areas. So and also not within government, also other international UN organizations we're working with together in collaboration for the staging of the National Women's Expo.
Thank you for that, Amelia. Yes, with us in studio today, representing the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Mrs. Amelia Nairamba. She is the Acting Principal Research Officer, and also representing the Fiji Arts Council, Mr. Lai Veikoso. Stay with us. I'm Dion Davu. You're on Speak Your Mind, and we'll have more after the break. Bulavinaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. I'm your host, Dion Davu, and with us in studio today on today's episode of Speak Your Mind, we have from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, Mrs. Amelia Nairamba. She is one of the Acting Principal Research Officers, and she is here to tell us more about the National Women's Expo 2017. Mrs. Nairamba, once again, thanks for taking the time to be with us, and of course, moving on with our questions. What other services will be available at this year's National Women's Expo 2017?
Thank you, Dion. Like I mentioned already, we'll be having the commercial banks will be providing financial literacy trainings, and also they'll be displaying a few of the brochures, information booths. They'll be out there who will be providing information where women could link themselves, and also specifically for knowledge, for their knowledge, and also we have quite of service providers who will be providing their services, specifically looking at the Ministry of Health. There'll be health screening, which is
now you talk about health screenings. Is that health checkups and
medical checkups? There'll be held there at the Vodafone Arena.
I see.
Yeah, and we have a group of medical officers from the Ministry of Health and Medical Services will be providing those services throughout the 3 days. So there's quite a vast of programs, information booths and services that will be provided there. So it's not only that we providing this for our rural women, for 500 women artisans, but also encouraging the public to also come, not only to come and support the women while they coming to buy their artifacts and the products, but also there'll be free services as well, and more importantly, supporting the our rural women who will be there, the Rio 3 days event.
So, and of course, the National Women's Expo, there's no entry fee or anything of the
No,
sort.
there's no entry fee. It's open for the general public.
It's
to
totally
come.
free to the public,
Yes.
and this is at the Vodafone Arena
That's
here
right.
in Suva on the date. And of course, yes, now Mr. Vekoso actually made mention earlier on that the Fiji Arts Council works very closely with the ministry when it comes to the craft shows. Now, these products, the Fiji Arts Council actually judges the products to see the workmanship and the quality and the craft work as well, and to see if those products actually can go to the Ministry of Industrial Relations, is it?
Industry. Well, actually, yes.
The Ministry
that
of-
is Industry and Trade. Ministry of
The Ministry of Industry and Trade is actually the ministry that
That
issues
is-
those licenses.
Yes, with the recommendations provided by the Fiji Arts Council.
I see. And of course, no doubt, Mr. Vekoso and his team's work very important because yes, the standard of the handicrafts and the particular items, they're all of international export standard.
Yes, yes.
So
That's
basically,
right.
this is what the ministry would like to encourage our rural women: is that you can design something, you can make something that can earn you money, and it's of an international standard.
That's right. And I would like to reiterate again the theme for this year. It's them to be empowered and also having the change of mindsets as well. Not only looking at within the four corners of where they come from, but also knowing that this particular product would not only be staged here at the national platform and not only being seen out here in these retailers, but also we're looking at how we'll be able to market this regionally and also internationally as well.
I see. And yes, going back to the craft shows, now the women and the handicrafts from all the four areas, large areas of Fiji. Now, you made mention already how many women will be participating, and can you just very basically, just shed some light on how those women were chosen?
Basically, we had invited our rural women throughout the 4 divisions to be able to participate at the provincial craft shows, and more importantly, that these are the women who are registered under the ministry, and that is how we were able to invite the women, and we were able to provide them that platform at that particular area throughout the district and the provinces and the divisions. Yeah? So otherwise, we are not only marginalizing only a few from the others, but we're actually providing the services and this platform to all women. And from there, they will be able to ascertain, okay, which the women, based on the products that they provide, will be able to stage and represent the provinces to the national event.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Nairombo. Of course, with us in studio today on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation. She is the Acting Principal Research Officer. Her name is Mrs. Amalia Nairombo, and she's telling us more about the National Women's Expo 2017. My name is Dion Lavu. Stay with us. We'll have more after the break. Buluvinaka, and welcome back to Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. We have reached our final segment. I'm your host, Dion Lavu, and with us in studio today, telling us about the National Women's Expo 2017 from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, the Acting Principal Research Officer, Mrs. Amalia Nairombo. Mrs. Nairombo, once again, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us on the show. And of course, yes, we've made it to the final segment, and we're down to the last number of questions. The first one: very basically, if a listener or a viewer at home right now wanted to participate in next year's National Women's Expo, how would they go about it?
Thank you, Dion. First of all, one of the things that we would like to encourage the women is, as long as they are registered under the Department for Women, and in whatever area, whatever division, and whatever community that they are in, we have our officers who are stationed all throughout the districts and the divisions who will be able to provide you more advice. But otherwise, it's providing registrations first, specifically for women's groups. So they register themselves, and then from there on, they'll be able to be provided the information on what other programs, apart from the National Women's Expo, that the department are currently doing. So that is foremost one of the key components that I wish to address here is the registration of the women's group with our Department for Women throughout the 4 divisions. And like I've mentioned, probably most or some of us must have taken part in this, must have missed out already. But otherwise, we'll inform the general public and specific to our women's groups throughout the 4 divisions when we'll be having our next roll of our divisional craft shows throughout the 4 divisions. And I'm sure that our divisional officers and our divisional teams, our women interest assistants, will be able to inform you accordingly the update of our programs. But otherwise, please do not hesitate to visit our offices, and from there you'll be able to know more. I mean, I'm encouraging our women listeners and who are listening throughout Fijis that please visit our offices throughout the divisions, which is where we'll be able to have an update of what will be our next craft shows throughout the 4 divisions.
So it's basically very simple. If you're a woman and you're interested in being a part of the National Women's Expo for next year, and of course being part of the provincial craft shows, all you need to do is simply go down to your nearest Ministry of Women office.
That's right, Dion. And also wish to reiterate and share the same sentiments what the Fiji Arts Council, our colleague Mr. Vikos had mentioned is by now you'll be able to know what are the criteria and what are the needs, what are the lenses, the quality lenses that the assessors or the Fiji Arts Council are looking for in terms of staging or providing you the platform with the quality of the products. So I believe this is an upper hand for our women listeners who are listening out there, that if there's one particular time that you wish to see how are they being identified and what kind of products and the quality of it, maybe it's a good opportunity for our women listeners who are listening out there that they could come and see the women from the 4 divisions, and they'll be encouraged and maybe take part in our next craft shows.
I see, and yes, of course, you've just encouraged our female audience to come up and visit the National Women's Expo 2017. Now, what would the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation like the women of Fiji, as well as members of the public, to understand about the National Women's Expo?
Thank you. Thank you, Dion. Basically, like I've mentioned, and I'll probably repeat myself again here, it's actually an approach that we would like to basically empower our rural women from all walks of life, and also providing and recognizing the talents and also the products that they can actually do. And these are means of their livelihood, and most of them do these products as means of their livelihood, and which is where we're coming in from the ministry. And now not only the ministry is working towards this, but also seeing other agencies who will be able to work together with the ministry in engaging women into possible areas where they'll be able to, they're economically empowered, and they'll be able to access such services which they won't be able to provide in their rural areas and communities.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Neromba. Yes, and moving on, what are a few of the other major upcoming events or initiatives that the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation will be looking to implement or be looking at during the year 2017?
Thank you, Dion. Maybe just to in relation to the National Women's Expo, one of the things that we will be staging in this year as well is providing a space for the Fiji Arts Council, specifically for those who have been licensed as the licensed Fijian-made craft.
So these are for individuals who have already attended
Yes.
in previous years, and there'll be a space set up for them.
These are specifically from, these are like the artisans who we would like to showcase to our rural women as
I
the
see.
benchmark of, okay, this is how the products that we would like to see as of standard. So there'll be a handful of a number of artisans that will be identified who are already, these are actually our assessors who assess the products. In this, they will be identified as, there'll be a separate booth for them to benchmark the products. And also looking at, we would like to also venture into, in terms of marketing, is providing digital recording, capturing of artifacts. Probably a product and artisan catalog, which we would like to see and which we would like to establish this year.
So this is
Yes.
something that's in the
Yes.
works.
And we will be hoping to have to see that we'll be able to identify artifacts and products that will go in included in our catalog, which not only will be having it here nationally, but we wish to have this sent out to other international agencies and throughout the other missions, which we're working closely with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and to see how we will be able to market our rural women artisans. Not only we're looking at women that who are licensed and the crafted Fijian made, but also looking at other rural women who are emerging license holders. We would like to encourage them as well, but also market them as well. And also you might be aware that there might be some unsold items that we see after the expo, which is why we're working very closely with some of our microfinance institutions to see whether we could be able to provide them another market that they'll be able to further market their products throughout the.
And of course, and this is all going with the theme of empowering women.
That's right.
I see. Thank you very much for that, Mrs. Nairomba. It seems we've reached the end of our segment today. Yes, with us today in studio on Gold FM's Speak Your Mind, telling us about the National Women's Expo 2017. Keep in mind, the National Women's Expo 2017 will be held at the Vodafone Arena in Laucala Bay, and it's on the 14th and the 16th of June. So please, if you have some time and a little bit of extra money, why don't you head on down and support our women of Fiji in their pursuit to empowering themselves to be financially secure. That's the National Women's Expo, 14th to the 16th of June at the Vodafone Arena here in Suva. And of course, from the Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, their acting principal research officer, who's been ever so wonderful to take the time to be with us today, Mrs. Amalia Nairomba. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. And of course, this is Dion Davu for Gold FM's Speak Your Mind. We'll talk to you again.